Thank you for being here and being our guest and taking your time to talk to us. I did send an email to Kian and I didn't hear a response as to whether you guys objected to being recorded. If you do, it's being recorded. I can't stop that, but if you do object, then we won't post it on our website. We won't do anything with it. So
Okay.
you'll have to let us know. But otherwise, we'll post it on our website and direct people there if they want to listen to it.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm okay with being recorded. So,
You're okay with being recorded?
yeah.
Okay, great. That's what we want to hear.
Yeah.
All right. So Mimi, take it away. You're going to give the introduction.
Okay, thanks, Kathy. So first, to introduce, though he isn't here, you may remember him from last year when Graciela spoke, and he was here as well. Kian Bliss is the chair, and we welcome Manuel Buenrostro, who is the co-chair of the Sacramento Community Police Review Commission. And we thank you for being here. The commission's charge is to review and make recommendations to the city regarding police department policies, practices, and procedures. Our relationship with the commission began in 2020 after the death of George Floyd and at the time when we were first established as a committee. And this was not long after the death locally of Stefan Clark as well, both of which resulted in an outcry from the public for police reform. Since then, we have monitored recommendations that the commission has made for reform within the Sacramento Police Department. And we've heard from the chairs of the commission since we first formed as a committee, including Kieran Savage Sanguin, Mario Guerrero, and last year, Graciela Castillo Krings, along with Kian Bliss, who was the co-chair at that time. Today, we had asked that we hear about the city's process or changes or reforms in the city's process in acquiring military use equipment. Manuel, you have said perhaps that's not something that you would be talking about. Maybe we can hear that from Kian when he arrives. Also, we had asked to hear about the 2020 Commission Action Plan, which is basically the Commission's agenda for the year, and you've said that you could address that. And then we had asked about the status of the 2018 Commission recommendations to the police department, including police training on the new, quote, use of deadly force standard that was set out in AB 392, following, I believe it was Stefan Clark's death, even before the death of George Floyd. After, we will have a brief question and answer period. And then Kathy and I have asked that committee members stay after the presentation to talk about our programs for other programs for this year. Excuse me. Go ahead, Manuel, please.
Of course. And thanks for having me here. And I apologize if I can't answer all the questions. Kian called me to be at this meeting. I might not have had all the communication that you had with him beforehand. So I'll answer what I can and just make sure that we can get back and answer any other questions that we have. So I think for me, I can at least talk a little bit about the work plan that we have for 2024 and what we have coming up at the commission. As I'm talking, please stop me and answer any questions, ask any questions if something is not clear. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, I've been on this commission for about a year now. I guess a year and a few months. I recently became the what do we call it? The
Vice chair.
Vice chair, thank you. I'm not the co-chair, I'm the vice chair of the commission. After Graciela had served 2 years and as chair, and Kian had served 2 years as vice chair. So under the new commission rules, commissioners can't serve for more than 2 years in one role. So that's kind of how that shuffle happened. But I've been learning as much as I can from Kian and Graciela throughout the process. I think for me, just going over the work plan that we have for 2024. This is right now going through the review process, so it's not a final work plan, but I can at least tell you some highlights of what we're looking at. One of the priorities that we have for this year is to have a joint workshop with the city council to figure out how we make this commission work better. So one of the issues that we've had since I came on board, and one of the frustrations that I sensed even from the first meeting was that the process for reviewing our policies was not as fast as we would like it to be. Sometimes we might not be getting the information that we would like to get from the police department. So we're going to be having a joint workshop with the city council over the next month or two to kind of talk about how we make the commission work better. So some of the items that we might discuss there would be how we might have more dedicated support and staffing for the commission, maybe clarifying what is in the city code about the commission's purpose as an oversight entity and as an entity that provides recommendations. And then something that I would like to see there is just a better idea for timelines and processes for recommendations. So that when we have recommendations, we go through them faster. Because I can tell you right now, from the meetings that we've been having, right now we're still reviewing responses from the police department on 2019 and 2020 recommendations. So so as we think about the process, we're talking about recommendations from years ago, at the same time that we're going to be working on 2024 recommendations. So just making sure that we have a better process for that and better expectations for both the department and also the city council on what the process can look like. We still have outstanding responses to review from the police department on recommendations from 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023. So getting those out of the way as much as possible is going to be a priority. One thing that I do want to highlight that has improved over the last year is that since late summer of last year, we did start to have more engagement from the police department at our meetings. So when I started on the commission, there was no presence from an actual official from the police department that would come to the meetings. I think the city manager was interpreting the direction that the city council gave him as having the assistant city manager be the representative from the department. So we wanted to have somebody that had more knowledge about the actual process. So for the past couple of meetings, we've actually had 2 representatives from the department come to the meetings, and we have recurring meetings every 2 or 3 weeks to talk about the recommendations to get through that backlog. Another priority is, as we're clearing the recommendations, we're hoping that there's a presentation to the city council on the 2021, 2022, and 2023 recommendations, just to make sure that the process is transparent. And then something that we might engage with this group a little bit more is we are also interested in hosting up to 6 community forums with community members and stakeholders to talk about relevant topics that might be of interest to the public around the police department. So just to give you an idea of topics that are top of mind, one of them is definitely focusing on having 3 meetings on military equipment use policy. Other topics that we've heard from the community that are important are focusing on the responses to homelessness from the police department. Also focusing on traffic safety and enforcement, and then focusing on community engagement at large and how community engagement programs from the police department can be improved.
What was the third one?
The third one was traffic safety enforcement. So the ones I listed were military equipment use forums. That would be multiple. Second one was homelessness. Third one was traffic safety and enforcement. And then the fourth one was community engagement programs and initiatives. And just kind of closing out, and then I'll hand it over to Keon, who can talk a little bit more about that military equipment use policy. Keon, thank you for joining and for inviting me. I'm just going over the work plan right now. And then I think you can maybe focus a little bit more on some of the more targeted questions. So we also have a yearly requirement that the city council has to review its military equipment use policy and do a report and have the city council update that policy every year. So that's going to be another area for us to focus on. I know that last year it was an area where we wish we had better data from the department. So that's definitely another big area for the work plan for 2024. And then lastly, we want to draft a complete recommendations and an annual report for the commission in 2024. So just like we do recommendations every year, that's going to be a big purpose of the work that we do. Again, drafting updated recommendations. And before we close the year, I just went over the 2024 work plan. So before we close the year, we want to start get started on the 2025 work plan. So that's going to be kind of the last two pieces. Finishing our commission report and recommendations, and then thinking about what the next year is going to look like. So that was a lot of information. I'll pause there just in case there's any questions, and then I'll hand it over to Kian, who can talk about the military equipment use policy a little bit more.
Thank you. Kian, welcome. We introduced you even though you weren't here, so we feel like we know you. Manuel has been very kind to talk about the action plan, 2024 action plan, and he just took questions, and there may be some. But the other issues that we had expressed an interest in were the military equipment acquisition. We remember from last year, the year before, it was highly controversial. And there's a process the city's supposed to follow, as Manuel was saying, and they weren't necessarily following it. So we're curious if there's been any change in that regard. And then the 2018-2019 recommendations, subsequent AB 392 about the deadly use of force standards and whether or not any training of the police was going on. Manuel has also let us know that things are pretty stacked up. Some of these recommendations, 2018, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. But maybe you have a sense of whether or not any of that training has taken place, in that Mario Guerrero had said it was good that that standard had changed and had been passed, but the training, the devil was in the details of the training and the police training. And if that didn't happen, what was the point in a way? So anything you could elaborate on? Thank you very much, Manuel. That was a good background for us.
Really want to thank Manuel for sharing all that with you and getting up to speed on like what we have in store for this year. My apologies for my late arrival. It's totally on my end. But yes, for those who don't know me, I'm Keon Bliss, he, him pronouns, and the chair of the commission. But yeah, let's just give a little bit of overview to talk about what you were concerned about with the military equipment use conversation. Yes, that is an annual process based on the legislature's passing of AB 481, which recognized how the very acquisition and use of military equipment and its deployment in our communities adversely impacts our public safety and welfare as civilians, including increased risk of civilian deaths, significant risk to civil rights, civil liberties, and physical and psychological well-being, along with the incurment of significant financial costs. So, and they also recognize that given that military equipment is more frequently deployed in low-income Black and Brown communities, meaning the risks and impacts of police militarization are experienced most acutely in our marginalized communities. The legislation, like AB 481's intent is to essentially create transparency and require police departments at all levels of the state to keep a public inventory of the equipment that they're allowed to use, and to every year report on how that equipment is used, and providing detailed data and whatnot, and also to provide independent oversight and create legally sanctionable mechanisms to enforce both their local MEU policies and AB 481. And to date, this is the third year in which AB 481 has been in effect. And for those who weren't available last year, or who weren't able to participate last year, we had last year was the first time that the city council had actually designated and directed the police department to essentially work with us to collaborate with the Police Review Commission on the process for community engagement. It basically gave two clear directions at its September 2022 meeting, which was that The police department should, through its annual military equipment use reports, provide detailed demographic information about when military equipment is used in the city, including information about who it was used against, when, such as dates, and dates and periods, as well as race and ethnicity and zip code. And if resources are needed for gathering this information, a budget augmentation would be considered within that. But it also required or directed PD to work with us to solicit community input and provide feedback, which is a key requirement under AB 481. So to that end, during the spring of 2023, a subgroup of our commission collaborated with the city and the police department to outline the structure, logistics, and outreach for hosting these community meetings with the goal of creating a welcoming and safe space for the public to voice their thoughts and concerns around the military equipment use policy and community policing in general. So that resulted in 3 meetings held in July 2023 to seek input and transparency around the mutual needs of community and police. And from those conversations were very robust. It was our first time really being at the lead to host a public dialogue of this level, and it provided a lot of lessons learned for our commission. One of the clearest takeaways from our participants in this engagement process was a strong desire by city residents to be more engaged, be engaged more deeply and thoughtfully on policing as a whole. Because as we all know, when citywide policing changes are made outside of the 2-minute comment periods, we're rarely afforded. There aren't many venues for the public to engage directly with the police department and have our concerns voiced. So a few of the lessons that we took away from that was, using more resources, having the city use their resources to advertise our meetings through the traditional media outlets, including social media, when these meetings tend to happen. They also would like us to provide more meetings and that have SPD officers attend when they're not in full duty uniform, but not just on the military equipment use policy, but also on additional policies. So from those conversations, we produced a comprehensive report on how the conversations went, and that resulted in 9 recommendations that were around the military equipment use policy that were derived squarely from community feedback. And a lot of those ended up reinforcing and building upon the military equipment use recommendations that we had passed in 2022, which was the first year when PD actually engaged in this public dialogue, which wasn't well received and had no meaningful collaboration or input from the commission with during their process, which is why we had these community forums from last year. But one of the key there were a few recommendations that came about from the conversation, which included establishing a formal and standardized process for soliciting community input and incorporating feedback into annual updates of the policy, and that city council should coordinate directly with the police review commission and the police department to organize community input forums within their respective districts, such as having each council member coordinate with their commissioners in the commission itself to either host a community input forum or at minimum attend at least one of these forums that we're looking to host that Manuel talked about on our work plan. And then also to provide annual funding for the Police Review Commission to continue engaging community directly and more often throughout the year ahead. So with that, that's actually what we're going to be discussing and laying the groundwork for in our meeting that's coming up this Monday, March 11th at 5:30, which we definitely invite all of you and your neighbors to tune in and attend. Which currently there's no call-in feature at the moment with the city public meetings, but we are in the City Hall chambers where council meets on 915 I Street. But I know I just threw a lot out there right now. I mean, when it comes to where the policy is at, the last we heard was that the police department anticipates wrapping up its reporting period at the end of April. And then it will, over the month of May, it will be conducting an inventory of its military equipment so that it can be included and hopefully, and then published in its annual military equipment use report in which they hope to get out by June. Our goal on the commission is to make sure that, you know, however long it may take, we're giving members of the community enough notice to mark their calendars for when these community forums happen, because we want to make sure that that we are providing enough lead time for members of the public to be able to participate in these meetings, and that includes for the additional meetings that we're going to be having on those other issue areas like homelessness and traffic safety and whatnot. But specifically for the MEU, our goal is to have our first meeting ideally by June, what we're aiming for. One of the things that we learned too from the last year's process was that community members want more lead time. They didn't really there wasn't enough done at the city's level, to promote a lot of these meetings, and they were really kind of put together. So our first meeting last year that we had wasn't as well attended until the city started promoting it on its media platform, putting out media advisories or whatnot. Now that we've been through this process at least once, we're hoping that it's going to be much more streamlined, and we can build on what we have going for, or the lessons that we learned from last year's process.
I have a question.
Yep.
Ken, the first meeting that you talked about in the spring of 2023, the collaboration.
Yeah.
That was with the commission, and that was with the city council and the police department, or just the city council?
So you said the process of engagement, where we developed this community engagement process, that was more with the police department, with help from the assistant city manager.
Okay.
So we were able to book 3 venues that were at, I believe it was the Panel Neighborhood Center, the Hart Senior Center, and the Hagenwood Community Center. Were the three places we were able to host these meetings. And by the second meeting, we actually got very good input and participation. Actually, it was a full room when we did that last year at Hagenwood, and also at the Hart Center as well. And one of the things that we learned from it too in that process, because we had a formalized agenda with a facilitator to help navigate the conversation. We learned that a lot of community members were really wanted to be heard. There were a lot of frustrations that were raised during those conversations, and a lot of valid concerns about how the police uses its equipment, and also just how they're engaged as a whole. So one of the lessons that we're going to be taking away from this year too is to honestly make it a little bit more unstructured, more open-ended, so that members of the community can, everybody can have have time and space to voice their concerns and their thoughts around policing in the community, and how military equipment is used and deployed.
Thank you.
Well,
I
that's,
see.
yeah, I was kind of about ready to faint when you said in April, the city's going to do an inventory of their military equipment, because I thought they had just purchased that one little armored vehicle. They need to do an inventory? How much stuff do they have there?
That is a really good question to ask, and that was a point of concern last year as well. So to speak to the point around the military equipment vehicle, that the armored Rook, the multi-terrain load carrier or whatnot, aka the Rook, that was purchased last year in the end of January 2023, to much community concern, and as well as our commission's concern. And what we learned by the time that we had the military equipment use policy come up was that a lot of their inventory that they had reported for in their report last year in 2023, what they had already had in their possession, but simply missed missed those inventory, thousands of rounds of ammunition, as well as hundreds of weapons that weren't counted in their initial inventory back in 2022 because they didn't have a formal inventory process that they conducted for their military equipment in the first year. So last year was the first time they had a full inventory, and now as part of their process, in once the reporting period ends, which begins in I believe they track it from for like May 1st to April 31st. That's their annual reporting period. And once that reporting period ends, they begin their inventory in May. So that's what we're going to be. We won't be getting a list, like an accurate list of what equipment they'll be having until the end of May at the earliest. But based on what they were at, they asked for a number of different increases, and that's what they're actually required to include in their report. Like if they need to purchase more equipment, such as additional maintenance equipment like batteries for their unmanned aerial service vehicle or unmanned aerial surveillance vehicles, or purchase more rifles or ammunition for their 40mm grenade launchers. You name it. Those are the things that are going to be included in this report that they need to this time they're going to have an accurate process. That's what they tell us to in order to report that and include in when we meet as a community.
Okay. So that means that it sounds like the federal military is unloading an awful lot of stuff. It's like a shopping store or something that the cities go to. I mean, I guess I never thought about where they otherwise got their ammunition, but is this ammunition that would be used in the kinds of guns police carry, or is it ammunition for just these kind of more souped up military kinds of things?
That's a good question. I mean, and Manuel, feel free to chime in on this if you like. I'm just speaking from my personal memory and recollection. I mean, the police department has received a lot of their military equipment from an expired or generally outdated federal program where the U.S. military would offload its surplus military equipment that it was no longer using to local police departments, usually at bargain prices, or even just giving it to them for free. Until 2021, there was no requirement for police departments to either report how much of this equipment they had in their stockpiles, or to get their local governing body's approval, which is city council or county board of supervisors. It wasn't until AB 41 that this became an express requirement, and this was only for California law enforcement agencies, mind you. So this isn't something that we see often in other jurisdictions, at least not the ones that I'm aware of.
Yeah, and I could share the link to the report from 2022-23. It has the full report, also has a summary. I remember just from the conversation last year, one of the frustrations that we had about the reporting was that there were 26 use of force incidents, for example. And one of the frustrations is that there was not a lot of detail about about those incidents. We just know that there were incidents. There was some demographic information about the suspect, but not much more about what happened in those situations. So that is something that for transparency purposes we care a lot about. And if you look at the summary of the report, there's two documents that you can look at. One of them is just like a 2-page summary. That one has a summary of all the equipment that they listed on the report. That might give you a good overview of what's there. And then I also know what one of the conversations that we had is just about the cost to the department, whether this is cost effective, the most effective way of using funds, because we know that as a city, that's a challenge. We have limited resources. Are we using them in the most effective way possible? And one thing that often comes up, or one myth that comes up, is that sometimes with the military equipment use, there might be a myth that it's a gift. or it's not completely something that the city purchases, but even if that's the case, well, number one, that's not always the case. Secondly, there's always cost when it comes to training and upkeep for equipment. So even if that was the case, there's still a cost to the city when it comes to that equipment. So I mean, again, that's one of the concerns that we have. Is this the most effective use of resources? And is this increasing to better public safety?
Mm.
And Keon, did you share a link to the report? Maybe I can send it to them afterwards. I think just yeah.
I didn't yet, but we can definitely send this information afterwards. We had I believe we're publishing it in our annual reports. It'll be included in that, which is going to be approved for this coming meeting. But we can send a copy of the report that we had sent to City Council last August after the meeting, if that works for you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. All right, were there any other questions before we move on? Okay. Do you want to talk more about deadly force and what's going on with that in the city? John's nodding his head. He has that question.
It's so funny because it seems like forever that we've been watching this, the letters go back and forth to the police department with here's the recommendations, and then the police send a response back, but the years just keep adding up, and AB 392 is pretty old by now. And is your sense anything has changed? I mean, I know they talk body cams, they talk de-escalation, they talk diversity in the department and the training on the use of deadly force, the change in the standard, but has anything really changed?
I mean, we have been told, from my recollection, that, the training standards have been updated. What the department has is like an annual training curriculum, which it publishes on its transparency page for everybody to see. And this is like what they do over the course of a year. But a lot of those trainings are just hours at a time. And a lot of one of the frustrations that I've experienced and many community members have voiced frustration about is that the amount of leeway that officers still have to use deadly force without exhausting all de-escalation tactics. I mean, speaking for myself, when this conversation was had in June 2021, which was my first year, I was very clear that we shouldn't be comfortable with police officers using deadly force, because a lot of these confrontations and conflicts do not need to result in somebody dying from that. There are other ways in which we can do that, but as it stands, while the department says that it has changed its training, and we did note that the use of force policy has been updated. It's really we can trust, but we need to verify how this is actually playing out. And there were at least 2 incidents, deadly force incidents in the last year that I saw or heard about, where it didn't feel as though the police department had actually exercised or exhausted those deadly force those de-escalation tactics. One of which was using essentially involving someone armed with a knife or whatnot, the proportionality of force within that needs to be considered. But really, I mean, these are the things that we're hoping that the commission wants to see done, and we've been asking questions about that. We're hoping to get a presentation on that. We have recommendations that go back all the way to 2018, and just to name on those, which did include some of our use of force recommendations, which ultimately were included in the updates. We did have constructive conversations to clear out some of that backlog. As of this year, there are 146 recommendations with an additional there's going to be several more that will be added from 2023. But if you add the 9 that we included in our report from last year's military equipment use community forums, the number is now up to 155. So we've been like, as the chair and vice chair, we were engaging with the department to go through the backlog, basically. So we reviewed and discussed our recommendations from 2018 and 2019, and we completed an evaluation of the department's responses to these recommendations. While they did come through on several different recommendations that we noted, and we actually published as of last year, and that will also be included in our annual report. We didn't actually see a lot of areas that were, or we didn't see them actually implement the policies or, our recommendations in other key areas. One of the things I would include, from like 2018, which I believe had a use of force standard. Well, we had actually included, from my understanding, I'm looking through 43 pages of documents to make sure I have it covered. One was around requiring quarterly public posting on statistics related to use of force, including at minimum the types of force, degrees, and types of and degree of injury to the officers, as well as date and time and other demographics. We found that while the department claimed that this was approved and implemented, we found that it was only partially implemented, as additional data was required to be collected, and this data hasn't been made publicly available within that.
I have a question, if I can interject. I know some of this information about whether there was an injury in a police event and whether it happens to a suspect or an officer is actually included in the Sacramento Open Data Portal. There's quite a bit of data there, and it seems like it's updated fairly regularly. Is that a piece of publishing the data, or is there a specific outlet that you're looking to receive the data?
I think I think that's one area in which it can be best published. But one of the takeaways that we got, another one of the takeaways that we got from the community forums last year, is that a lot of this information is kind of hidden behind a lot of technical jargon that a lot of community members don't understand, or it isn't readily apparent with with detailed explanations on what that includes. So we're still looking for annual use of force statistics that could provide better data in that, and they could include that too within the annual within their annual use report, which is another area which they requested that information be detailed.
What was that report it could be put in? You said annual.
Their annual military equipment use report.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, one of the things that we included in our recommendations that based on the community feedback was around requiring the police department to track and report the total number of military equipment deployments within the city's jurisdiction, separately from the total number of reportable uses of force, because it was found by community members that were keeping track that while the department's the current annual use reports that the department has published doesn't list how or when the equipment was deployed in a critical incident, only reportable uses of force when military weapons are discharged during the incident. So there were 86 incidents of out of the 248,000 plus contacts during the reportable period for 2022, where the reportable ratio to all contacts were basically 4 to 10,000. A member of the public's considered it an outrageous underreporting that conceals a great deal of police activities that could be that could be reviewed for accountability purposes.
So it sounds, one thing encouraging, it does sound like you've established some conversations and some dialogue that's sounds a little stronger than what we've heard before, I would say.
Yeah, I would say so. Before November 2022, we weren't it was very hard for us to even get the police to sit down and attend our meetings. There was a period of time from May 2022 until as late as August 2023, where the department simply wasn't required and didn't show up to our meetings, which was a profound frustration for me and other commissioners. And it, once we had gone through the community forum process, we noticed a bit of a turnaround where we didn't just have them showing up to our meetings, but we also were able to start meeting biweekly with the department to specifically to talk around, like updates between the meetings around like any policy updates or important issues that council directed the department to collaborate with us on. But we also got a chance to really talk through and our past recommendations to review the department's response. And last year was the first time we actually got a formal written response to any of our recommendations from the department. So we have right now, as of today, we have responses from and have evaluated our the 2018 recommendations, the 2019 recommendations, and we are currently working through the 2020 recommendations, which we hope to have wrapped up here. My goal is to have it wrapped up here in the next month. And once and ideally, once the process for the for this is complete, each time we evaluate the department's implementation of our recommendations through these conversations, we will be publishing it on our agenda and discussing it as a commission, and where we'll have a detailed analysis or evaluation of what we see compared with what the department indicates has been approved or implemented or not been implemented, and then forwarding that to the city council for full consideration. And to that end as well, I don't know if Manuel mentioned it earlier, but we are also in the process of organizing a joint workshop between the commission and the city council to go through what was reported by the city auditor back in 2021, which ended up corroborating a lot of our recommendations on the deficiencies of our commission and the current process for reviewing recommendations as a city, which included, providing adequate staffing for the commission, as well as being very clear about our role, our purpose, and as well as our duties and place within the city's policymaking structure.
Kian, this begs the question, when and where are your meetings for those who might want to attend?
Great question. So our meetings are held on the second Mondays of every month at 5:30 p.m. That's been changed from last year when we used to meet at 6. But we meet second Mondays of every month at 5:30 at City Hall, the council chambers at 915 I Street.
And those meetings are open to the public?
Those meetings are all open to the public, and we really encourage folks to come in. We do our meetings a little bit differently, where we invite members of the public to come in and speak first before we jump into our agendized items. So off-agenda comment we hold at the beginning of each meeting, and we allow more time for community members to give voice. One of the things we include in the report and the military, in the report from last year, was that 2 minutes simply isn't enough time for community members to really sufficiently voice their concerns or thoughts and meaningfully participate in our public meeting processes. So as chair, I'm seeking to give community members much more time, as much as 5 minutes, to share their thoughts and make recommendations to the department. And that includes even reporting their experiences with the police department, whether that for better or worse.
Are your meetings hybrid or just in person?
They are currently in person only. The city unfortunately did away with their Zoom conferencing, their teleconferencing for that. And it's one of the things that we sorely miss, because that allowed more members of the public to participate in the city's meeting process. I don't know if it's coming back, but it's one of the things I continue to advocate for as a private citizen and from the dais.
Kian, are your meetings recorded?
They are all recorded. You can
So we could-
access them at the city's website on its public meeting page, which I can I don't have I can't remember the URL off the top of my head, but looking it up here, it is if you go to meetings at meetings.cityofsacramento.org, I believe is how you can access those.
Okay, thank you. You know, we were going to have a question and answer period, but I think we've kind of asked the questions as you've gone along here, unless others have questions they want to ask specifically now.
John, Andrea,
Matthew?
Does the commission have a
Matthew, yeah.
website or a place we can go to get your reports and your information and that sort of thing?
So we do not have a website that we ourselves control at the moment, but we do have a listing of recommendations that the department has responded to under the police department's transparency page right now. We're one of the conversations that we're hoping to have with council is to give us access to this page so that we can put our recommendations up publicly for that. One of the ways that we're also working to do that is we've created a social media page for the first time. So just to so that everybody in the public knows is that if you go to cityofsacramento.gov/police/police-transparency, you will find the Sacramento Community Police Review Commission recommendations at the bottom, towards the bottom of the page under more. And right now they have responses to 2020, which unfortunately, last I checked, was using an outdated like some outdated rationales and letters that we had gone through an entire process back in 2022 to update some of our recommendations to provide greater rationale at the direction of the city council, but that hasn't been updated yet. So, but we're working through that, and we hope that as we evaluate these responses and they are approved by the full commission, they will be the webpage will be updated to have that full context included in for those recommendations, both the department's response and our evaluating response, so that everybody in the public can know where each agency or organization stands, and for city council to better weigh that as they consider implementing this as formal policy.
Kian, I'm wondering if, I think Manuel was going to send us the 2022-23 link to the MEU report. Is that right?
Yes.
What I was wondering is if we could also get some of these other access links we've just been talking about to get into the meeting, to get the recording, what you just gave us with the transparency. It would be very handy to have it all in one place if that's possible.
Absolutely. We can definitely.
Great, if you could send that. For whatever reason, Kent, if you can hear me, I don't have a chat feature. I was going to tell them to put it up in chat, but there's no.
Yeah, we can't do that right now.
That I see. So,
Yeah.
but if you want to just dump all that on a page and send it to Mimi, that would be great.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can forward it. I can send it through the same email thread that we were connected to, or just a new email thread, and we'll have that.
That's great.
That's fine too. Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. Matthew, did you have any questions for Andrea?
The question that I would have is how, as citizens, can we best get involved with the commission?
That's a good one.
Really good question. So best way to get involved with us, especially, is to show up at our monthly meetings on the second Monday of every month at 5:30. That's a great way to voice your concerns and also to provide us direction on what you would like us to really look into relevant to our work plan or the recommendations as we are discussing those. So this Monday, we're also going to be again, we're going to be discussing and approving our 2023 annual report, which will include all a list of our recommendations, which cover topics including search and seizure policy, as well as organizational culture and accountability, and the formal approval of the MEU community feedback recommendations. But another way too is to reach out to your council member. A lot of speaking for myself, I show up at a lot of my council members' community meetings when she has them. My council members, Katie Valenzuela, and we recently had last month a District 4 community meeting where her appointed commissioners all showed up and we were introduced there. So you can reach out to that. But you are also free to reach out to me and or Manuel directly if you so please.
Yeah, I would say definitely reach out to to us. We're happy to answer your questions or even learn about the concerns that you have. And Kian made a very important point. Reach out to your council members because for a lot of the structures that we have, it is at the discretion many times of the city manager. So having the support from the city council is critical when it comes to maintaining a lot of the presence of the department and making sure that there's follow-up. That is critical, having that support. And I would say just the nature of each commission, there's a commissioner for every city council district. So
I was gonna just ask you that, because when we first met, that's how we found you guys, is we are. So who is our commission representative?
you're in
Do you know?
District 5?
District 5, yeah. Who is it?
District 5 is actually Commissioner Kim Carter Martinez.
Kim Carter Martinez, okay.
Mhm.
Kim Carter Martinez.
Yes.
Not that we wouldn't go to you guys, but
No, it's great to know who you're. I mean, for me,
yeah, this isn't that the idea. You're supposed to also filter comments through them. Yes.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, reaching out to your council member is a good way to get in touch with them directly. I mean, just to be just for context purposes, we're all volunteers on the commission.
Yeah.
And we're appointed and community members the same as you. But we're doing this work because we care about it, and we're engaged and want to see positive changes and in policing practices and policies that are reflective of our shared values and mutual interests in public safety that we all share as community members. And that includes those of us on the who are most particularly vulnerable and experienced previous harms, with it, from policing as a whole. So yeah, really, I can't express enough to turn up to our meetings. We some of us can often stay afterwards, and I usually try to linger in case anybody wants to talk to me. So happy to talk with anybody. And yeah, feel free to reach out to me directly at any point, or my council member to get in touch.
Okay, great. Well, it's a little after 1, and we probably shouldn't hold you guys too much more. Unless you have one last thing you want to say, or one last question from any of us.
Oh, well, one thing I wanted to name was that another way to engage with the commission is to join the commission. And as of today, there is there is a vacancy on the commission under the mayor's appointee. The mayor gets to appoint 3 commissioners, and then each council member gets to appoint 1. And I'm pretty sure there's still a vacancy open under the mayor's appointees, but that will also
open.
Go ahead.
It says that it's not accepting applications, so I think it's pending.
So there might be somebody already in the queue. That said, each year, once a council member or the mayor steps off, either for term limits or retires, those positions will be opening again. So check back for upcoming vacancies that once the mayor, once we elect a new mayor at the end of this year, and yeah, really encourage more folks to participate in this.
Yeah, and I mean, this goes for every commission. I would say encourage people to be part of commissions, figure out from your council member what openings there are, because it's a great way to get involved.
Mhm. Yeah, you learn a lot. You learn a lot and do a lot. All right, well, thank you very much. Oh, Ken, you weren't here in the beginning. We have recorded this meeting. Do you have any objections if we post it on our website
That's okay. Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine. Yeah, I don't have any problem with that.
for those who weren't able to attend? That's great.
Thank
Thank
you
you
both
so much.
very much. We
Yeah.
really appreciate this. Thank
Yeah,
you.
and you know what we really appreciate is all the hard work you do on this. It's a lot of meetings and a
A
lot
lot
of
of meetings.
analysis for volunteers. Very technical, very nuanced.
And very important,
Yeah,
very important.
We really appreciate it. We hope you feel some a love going back to you so that when you go back to your work, you'll feel a little more emboldened.
Someone's paying attention, you know?
Yeah,
That's appreciated.
yeah.
Yes, we really appreciate that, truly. Really appreciate the work that you continue to do in your neighborhoods. And yeah, don't hesitate to be in touch if there's any questions you may have.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And then those of you on racial justice who want to stick around, and Matthew, you're welcome too, to just briefly get an update on our future doings of our racial justice committee. We'll talk about that real quickly.
Bye, everybody.